Russia was hiding something huge in Donetsk. Obscured from view in a building especially chosen to be as discreet as possible. What Russia attempted to conceal was vital to the country's war effort in what is now the most important region of the Ukraine war. Vital, irreplaceable, filled with the one thing that Russian soldiers need to carry out their assaults. But Ukraine found it and replaced it with a fireball. A fireball so hot that it would have felt like it was summoned from the darkest depths of hell. And wouldn't you just know it, that's exactly what Ukraine wanted Russia to think. Operation Hell has been launched, and Russia is learning what the inferno feels like. Russia thought it was being clever. In the bowels of occupied Donetsk is the settlement of Novoamvrozivka. That settlement, along with many others, had become part of a large network of fuel depots and logistics nodes that Russia has created in the Donetsk Oblast. And all of those targets were once believed to be out of range of Ukrainian strikes. Still, Russia had prepared for the very day when this would no longer be the case. In Novoamvrozivka, a key fuel depot was hidden away from sight. Rather than being out in the open, it had been sequestered away inside the grounds of a massive cement plant. Fuel would be delivered to the plant via rail and stored in both underground reservoirs and above-ground tanks, all of which were concealed from sight. Russia maintained the subterfuge by transporting fuel back out of the facility using trucks disguised as civilian vehicles. Those trucks would then take the fuel to core supply depots, ensuring that Russian assault groups inside Donetsk had what they needed to conduct mechanized assaults and other operations involving vehicles. The concealment of this operation worked for months, until it didn't. On July 12th, Ukraine's first Azov Corps revealed that it had not only located Russia's secret fuel base, but that it had struck it with drones that have left untold tons of vital Russian fuel burning. That strike was part of a wider attack against Novoamvrozivka that also damaged railway lines and sent a very clear message to Putin that a logistical hub he once believed to be out of reach was now a very clear target. The Azov Corps dubbed the strike Operation Hell, and this is how it happened. A strike like this one isn't something that can be carried out on a whim. This wasn't a simple case of the Azov Corps finding the hidden site and then sending drones to destroy it. As the Corps reveals in the Telegram post that it used to announce what it had done, Operation Hell required months of planning and observation before Ukraine could be sure that it had the right location and that it would be able to maximize the impact of the drones that it was preparing to send. The Azov Corps' members couldn't get into the plant. That would have required fighting through waves of Russian occupiers, which is a suicide mission. Instead, the Corps' drone operators flew reconnaissance sorties over the hidden Russian fuel facility. Each flight provided a little more information than the last. The concrete plant's layout was mapped, ensuring that strike drone operators would be able to quickly identify the targets they needed to hit when they were called upon. The logistics network that fed in and out of the plant, including the railway lines we mentioned earlier, were also observed and mapped, as was much of the supporting infrastructure that kept the Russian fuel plant running. Over months, a plan was put into place. Ukraine even chose the perfect drone for the job, the AI-powered Hornet that has been wreaking havoc in the middle strike range by taking out Russian fuel and supply trucks all over the occupied territories for the last few months. This time, those drones would face a much more challenging task. They were the perfect choice, and we'll explain why in a few minutes, but for now we'll stick with Operation Hell. With its planning complete and its weapon of choice established, the Azov Corps was ready to strike. But as we said before, this wasn't a case of simply sending drones to strike fuel tankers. It all started with a railway crane. The first target of a layered strike operation was far from any old crane. It was the specific crane that the Azov Corps identified as being the one that Russia would try to use to clear damaged railway tracks feeding onto the hidden fuel depot that served as the main target. Taking out the crane meant slowing Russia down, and that line of thinking continued with the second target, as the Azov Corps followed up by hitting a locomotive that was already on the tracks. A 1-2 punch of blocking rail access was delivered. The stricken locomotive could no longer move out of the way of the other trains trying to get in, and with the crane out of commission, it couldn't even be yanked off the tracks. You might think that the fuel storage facility was next up, but you'd be wrong. The Azov Corps had another step in its plan. Its next target was an electrical substation that provided power to the cement plant concealing Russia's fuel. This was a genius move. We can only imagine the panic inside the plant as the lights went down. Russian soldiers who just moments before would have felt confident that Ukraine didn't even know what was hidden in the cement plant would have been struck with the realization that something was very, very wrong. And as they panicked, having no idea what to do next, that's when the Azov Corps made headlines. The next wave of drones to arrive targeted the fuel tanks and railway lines that had been so carefully mapped out months before. Russia couldn't do a thing about it. A strike as unexpected as anything that Ukraine has launched before in the occupied territories was pulled off with such masterful precision that a key Donetsk fuel storage site stood no chance. Fuel products are the blood of war. To supply the occupation force, the Russians spent a long time building a network of logistics hubs they believed were protected from Ukrainian attacks. UAV operators of the 1st Azov Corps changed the enemy's plans, the Corps declared on Telegram. It also pointed out that this attack has another massive effect that will impact Putin's plans for Donetsk. Part of Russia's fuel supply network will now have to be moved from the occupied territories and into mainland Russia. For the soldiers on the front lines in Donetsk, that means large delays in getting fuel to them for their operations. Will that slow Russia's rate of attack? Unlikely. Putin is callous enough to tell those soldiers that they still have to attack or lug supplies around. They'll just have to do it without vehicles while trying to protect themselves in Ukraine's kill zones. Somehow we don't think that's going to work out particularly well. By taking out Russia's hidden fuel depot, Ukraine has also doomed more of Putin's patsies, just as Ukraine intended. And it's also not as though those soldiers weren't already feeling the pain of fuel shortages that have been racking the Russian army. Earlier in July, Ukraine's Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov revealed that Ukraine's logistical destruction campaign has already resulted in some Russian soldiers being forced to trudge up to 30 kilometers on foot just to reach the frontline positions. That's 30 kilometers where Ukrainian reconnaissance drones are on a constant lookout as drone strike operators wait for the command to attack anything that moves. Therefore, we see problems with logistics for the Russians. We see problems with critical infrastructure, which in principle also affects the combat capability of the troops. We see that maneuverability has been disrupted in Russian forces. We see that logistics continues to suffer every day, Fedorov said. We're definitely seeing suffering. Now it won't just be Russian soldiers in the south making on-foot journeys of dozens of kilometers. In Donetsk, the troops that Putin needs to take the one piece of territory that he requires to claim anything that might even resemble a victory over Ukraine have just been deprived of their fuel. On and on they'll have to march, many toward their inevitable deaths. And beyond the planning that made this possible, there is the drone that Ukraine used for the series of strikes in Novoambrosivka. We told you earlier that the Hornet was the perfect choice for the job. This is why. The Hornet is capable of striking targets at a depth of up to 150 kilometers, which is why it has been so effective in Ukraine's logistics lockdown campaign. It can travel far beyond the front to score direct hits against moving targets such as fuel trucks. Frankly, those capabilities weren't even stretched in Novoambrosivka. The fuel depot Ukraine struck wasn't a moving target. It was also well within the Hornet's range. Pravda reports that the secret facility the Azov Corps hit was just 16 kilometers away from the Russian state border. Ukraine's Hornets could have done several laps and still had enough juice left to carry out their strikes. Granted, the Hornet isn't the most powerful drone in the world. It carries a 4.5-kilogram warhead, but that was enough for Russia's fuel tankers. They are relatively soft targets, and it only takes an explosion or two to send a whole lot of fuel up in flames. But what makes the Hornet really special is its use of AI, which has been implemented in the form of advanced guidance algorithms, allowing the drone to travel as far as needed without having to worry about jammers. That same algorithm also allows the Hornet to automate target detection and tracking, meaning all the Azov Corps needed to do was program the appropriate targets into the drone and then let the algorithm do the rest. This is automated warfare at its most devastating. The sting of the Hornet has just been felt by every Russian soldier who relied on the secret Donetsk fuel facility. And as the cement plant that Russia thought it had so cleverly used to conceal its fuel burned, Ukraine had other irons in the fire. Taking out the Donetsk plant meant no fuel in the occupied territories. Ukraine complemented that with another, over 800 kilometers away, that only makes Russia's fuel challenges worse. But before we dig into that, this is the Military Show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, take a moment to hit the button and ring the notification bell so you see more of our daily videos. On the same day that the Azov Corps revealed that it had blown one of Russia's biggest secrets wide open with Hornet drones, another story broke. About 800 kilometers away from Ukraine, drones had scored multiple hits against the Syzran oil refinery in the Samara Oblast. That refinery has been a target before. As it should be, it's capable of refining about 8.9 million tons of crude oil into fuel and other oil-based products every year. But this time, Ukraine did more than force a temporary shutdown of the refinery. Its drones were so precise that analysts believe that every primary refining unit has been hit, potentially taking the Syzran plant's potential output right down to zero. Euromaidan Press has the details. It reports that Ukraine's strike started at some point during the night of July 11th and that it continued into the early hours of July 12th. By 0430, monitoring channels including Supernova Plus and Excelenova Plus were reporting on the strike, sharing footage of the flames and the massive clouds of smoke rising out of Russia's largest refineries. It wasn't long after that the strike was mapped out. According to the open-source intelligence channel Cyberbaroshno, Ukraine's Syzran strike appears to have been conducted using long-range FP-1 drones, and those drones hit a trio of processing units that the plant needs to do what it does. Among the units struck was the AVT-5 primary processing unit, the channel says. That single unit accounts for 2.6 million of the 8.9 million tons of oil that Syzran processes annually, which is around 30% of capacity. The AVT-6 unit, which handles the remaining 6.3 million tons, was also struck. And it also looks like Ukraine's drones hit the LCH-35 11600 catalytic reformer at the plant, which is used to make components required in gasoline. If these reports are correct, then we see two things. One, Ukraine's drones are getting more accurate by the week, so much so that Russia can't plausibly use its usual drone debris excuse because it's clear that Ukraine has scored direct hits on exactly what it wanted to hit. And two, the entire Syzran refinery has just been taken offline. 100% of its oil processing capacity has been destroyed, and it may be weeks or perhaps even months before Russia can get the plant even partially online again. After all, it's not exactly easy for Russia to get its hands on the many components needed to repair or rebuild these destroyed processing units when it's under the weight of Western sanctions designed to prevent Russia from purchasing these components. We used the term 1-2 punch to describe how the Azov Corps took out the railway infrastructure and then the fuel at the hidden Donetsk facility. We can use it again here. Ukraine delivered a stiff jab with its Donetsk attack, and it followed that up with an absolute haymaker that took out Russian fuel at one of its sources. That's what we're seeing here, layered strikes that are hitting Russia's entire supply chain, from source to the very trucks being used to carry the fuel. This is all having a massive effect on Russia. The fuel crisis is well underway, and there is no part of Russia that isn't suffering. A lot has been said about how Ukraine's middle-range and deep strikes are causing fuel shortages that affect Russian consumers, and a lot should be said about that. These shortages are ramping up the pressure on Putin by making a lot of Russian people very angry with their supposed strongman protector. Queues at gas stations throughout Russia now extend for miles, and many people who wait for several hours in these queues end up discovering that the pumps have emptied and that they have to go somewhere else to queue all over again. Some opportunistic Russians are even securing places in line and then selling those places for as much as $460 to the desperate people who need fuel. The mood is souring inside Russia due to all of these shortages, The Independent's Alexander Titov reported on July 10th. I have traveled to Russia yearly since 2022, and there has been a clear change in the mood. In 2022, it was all about survival and adapting to the new reality of sanctions and war. Over the next couple of years, there was stabilization and growing optimism about the economy's ability to adapt. However, by 2026, there was talk of an economic recession, even before the current fuel shortages hit, Titov writes. That's all part of Ukraine's pressure plan for Putin. However, with the strike in Donetsk, we can see that Ukraine is leveling up its campaign to create a Russian fuel crisis. Now, it's not just the average person queuing at the gas station who feels it. The soldiers on the front lines are having the lifeblood of their assaults snatched away from them. The idea is simple. Cut the military off from fuel and you cripple the Russian war machine. Ukraine has escalated its fuel campaign. It's now striking fuel tankers in the Sea of Azov to stop gasoline and diesel from reaching Crimea and the occupied territories on the mainland. We've just seen Ukraine execute a well-planned strike against a hidden fuel storage facility in Donetsk. EU Observer reports that not even Russian soldiers can get fuel at the pumps in many regions. And if Ukraine keeps escalating as it is, it will soon be the case that those soldiers won't be able to get fuel on the front. Perhaps that is already happening. You don't get 30-kilometer on-foot treks like those that Fedorov mentions if you have an abundance of fuel. It's not just the civilians who are being starved of fuel now. It's the entire Russian military. The numbers don't lie. Russian soldiers are being eliminated faster than at any other point in 2026 as a result of these fuel problems. In the 24 hours up to July 13th, Russia lost an estimated 1,600 soldiers, Pravda reports. We wonder how many of those soldiers were being forced to walk to the front rather than drive, only to run into a Ukrainian drone. In June, Russia lost almost 40,000 of its troops as its logistics broke down and its soldiers became more vulnerable than ever. We're seeing the knock-on effect of the fuel crisis that Ukraine has created here. Bit by bit, Putin's entire war machine is falling apart. And then there's Donetsk. Putin wants Donetsk to fall as quickly as possible. He's been saying that for years, ever since Russia started its campaign of aggression against Ukraine back in 2014. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that Putin has set 15 deadlines for the fall of Donetsk and the wider Donbass region, the vast majority of which have already come and gone with no results. The latest of those deadlines to come out of the Kremlin is December 31st. That comes on the back of the previous 2026 deadlines of March 31st, well, that one didn't work out, and September 1st, which Putin appears to have given up long before we even get there. The deadlines don't matter. Al Jazeera says that at Russia's current rate of advance, it will take another 5,150 days, or about 14 years, for it to take the rest of Donetsk. Odds are Putin will be dead by then. Fuel on fire at a hidden storage facility less than 20 kilometers from the front isn't going to help matters for Russia. It means another slowdown. It means more soldiers forced to move on foot through the kill zones. And most importantly, it means that Putin's Donetsk fantasy has been destroyed. Russia isn't going to take Donetsk, at least not anytime soon. And as Putin tries to figure out what happens next, the Azov Corps moves on. It likely has more reconnaissance drones in the sky already, scoping out the next target that Russia has tried to hide and Ukraine isn't supposed to be able to hit. Now, we mentioned the massive queues at the gas stations in Russia, but what we didn't tell you about were the fights, the guns, the knives, the police, and there's no nice way to say this, the shit. Chaos and violence reign in the gas station queues right now, and you can find out all about it if you watch our video. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribing to the Military Show is only a click away, and we'll deliver your daily dose of Russia's latest failures in its ill-fated invasion of Ukraine. Thank you, as always, for watching.